So I did a video recently on sports cards, which is definitely not something I'd ever talked about before. And I think I kind of walked into a little bit of a snake pit with that one. So when you've dug yourself a hole, where you find yourself in a hole, make sure you dig a little deeper. So I'm going to do a video on sort of a question that people were asking about investment versus collecting. When are you an investor and when are you a collector, and what's the difference? Because there were some people who kind of questioned, why do you even care what the prices of your cards? If you cared about them, if you had fun, then who cares whether they're worth $200 or 10 cents? I feel very differently about that than some people, and some people did agree with me. I'm going to try to keep this video at around 10 minutes and then just cut it off when I get there. So I'm going to use an example, which is video games, um, instead of sports cards, although I might mention sports cards. So back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, or whatever, I was buying a lot of DS and 3DS games, and every game I bought, I intended to play. So we have Etrian Odyssey 2 and Dragon Quest 4, and if you note, they are still factory sealed. And so what happened? Well, basically what happened was so I was buying a lot of JRPGs. You could see that 4 out of 5 of these are JRPGs. And then the Dark Spire is a sort of a retro dungeon crawler game. And this game is also, although it's not shrink wrapped, it's also sealed. I played a few JRPGs handheld and found them quite repetitive, the and antiquated. And I love JRPGs back in the day, but I think their time has kind of come and gone. At least for me, some people may still enjoy playing them, and you can also see that one, two, three of the 5 are Atlas games. And I ended up just not getting around to playing them. I was going to maybe on a flight start them up, but they're very time consuming. And then, just being a curious sort, I was looking at video game prices and discovered that these games had gone up quite a bit. And then at that point, I said, okay, I'm not going to play these games because they. Why would I open a $200-$300 game that cost me 30-40 bucks, when I could just sit on them and then eventually sell them and probably get a lot more enjoyment out of the money I make than out of the playing the game. And I could play the game and just sell it at a reduced price, a complete in box rather than new. But I just was I at that point I changed from gamer to investor. And one of the things about investment versus collecting, I would say, or a few things, is, do you have an emotional attachment to the item? So I love video games. This isn't simply an investment, because video games are an important part of my life. And but these games, not necessarily. I've played the Dragon Quest games. Again, I feel their time has come and gone. I played one of the Etrian Odyssey and didn't really enjoy it that much. So, how upset would I be if these were gone? Not that much upset, but I don't need the money, so I didn't feel like selling them. And we'll just see. I mean, some of these are near the top, value wise or price wise, in the Nintendo DS collection. So I didn't feel like selling them. I became an investor just because I like to see the prices. And another question about investment versus collecting is, do you intend to display them? And I do have them on a shelf, so they can be seen. Um, Now, with sports cards, it's a little bit difficult, because you might have some sports cards that are quite a bit more valuable than others, and you might display those. Um, but by and large, sports cards there's so many of them that they're just probably going to sit in boxes. And then it's like, are you collecting or are you investing? Because if they're just sitting in a box on a shelf somewhere, they're only kind of in your mind. I mean, you can pull them out and look at them, but it's not like a piece of artwork where you invest, collect, whatever, but you're displaying it also. And almost all of my figures, particularly the figures that I like, there are some figures I'm not displaying because I just don't care about them, probably regret purchases. But by and large, they're on display. You could walk around and see them. So those are definitely I'm collecting them. However, if in 10 years I got curious and said, well, let's see, what are my $300 or $400 figures worth now? And I discover that they're selling for $40, $50 a piece. I would be disappointed, even though I care about my robots and other figures. I would be highly disappointed if I could recreate my whole collection at a significant reductions at some small percentage. And I guess some people are like, well, why? Who cares? You love your figures, so who cares whether they're... But I'm not immortal. I'm going to be gone someday. And at some point, I may feel the need to start selling them, particularly if I don't feel like passing them on to people who don't want them. So yeah, for me, if I was collecting seashells or bottle caps, would I care if their value didn't appreciate? No, because I didn't invest anything in them. I don't think too many people spend money, particularly a seashell you find on the beach. You don't expect anything because you didn't invest any money in it. Now, I'll show some video games that are definitely bought as a collectible. This one is a little bit beat up, but Alternate Reality: The City. This is one of the first RPG video games. I'm not sure. So it was for the Atari, and I did buy this. I owned it, but I also bought it off of Amazon. So this is from 1985, and it's got all sorts of things inside. And the absolute fact of the matter is, when I bought this, I had no intention of seeing it appreciate in value. Fairy Tale from the Amiga. Again, I owned it, I sold it, then I bought it again. Marble Madness. Again, Amiga. Not only will I not play them, I could not play them. And finally, Bard's Tale. No thought in my head of one day selling these at a profit, because I just wanted them because they meant something to me. So that is definitely a pure collectible, although they are on a shelf in the basement. And so nobody's going to, or somebody could see them, but not too many people. And they wouldn't even know what they were. So I think it's a little bit squishy trying to figure out whether you're a collector or an investor, because another example is I have a massive collection of Golden Age Captain Marvel comics. Am I collecting them or am I investing in them? Because I definitely bought them with the hope that they would appreciate in value. And one of the reasons I was buying them is because I felt they were surprisingly low for high-grade Captain Marvel comics. On the other hand, Captain Marvel is probably in my top 3 favorite superheroes of all time, maybe number 2. So I do have an emotional attachment to these comics. So am I a collector or am I an investor? I would say I'm both, because I do have an emotional attachment to them. I have things that I have no emotional attachment. When I buy stocks on the stock market, I have no emotional attachment to them. They're non-physical. They're just numbers in a computer. That is a pure investment. I bought a game which was on April 1st last year, a GBA game of Night Trap. It was a 1 day sale, and I bought it, and I will never open it. I will never play it. It's a new game, and that is an extreme rarity for me. I think it may be the only time I've ever done that, which is buy a new game with no intention of ever playing it, simply because I think it's interesting, it's neat, and it may go up in value. So I've exceeded the 10-minute mark. I have more to say about this, but I think you can be a collector and investor at the same time. But I definitely, if I invest money in something, which means purchase it, I am the type of person, I'm not going to be particularly pleased if it plummets in value, particularly when it is a market that is manufactured. I didn't get into Beanie Babies, but a lot of people spent a lot of money and watched it go up in smoke. But if it's over exuberance, that's one thing. When the market is manipulated, that's another thing. And that's something that has gone on with video games recently. And I'm not going to get into it because then my video will go way over. But I'll talk about it sometime, which is the manipulation of video game prices.